Hello.
Welcome
Again.
to.
What are you doing?
I thought we were supposed to.
Anyway, welcome to the online lesson of the cultural impacts of globalization. Again with Mr. Clement Tan, which
Yes.
makes me realize I think I need new friends.
Seems like we are doing this quite often.
No longer special guest really lah, huh?
Yeah,
Okay, so
not paid for this.
I give you $2 now, okay, later.
Sure.
So what is culture? Culture can be defined as all the ways of life, including arts, beliefs, and institutions of a population that is passed down from generation to generation. So culture is really like the way of life for an entire society. So like very basic things like how we greet people actually changes according to culture also. So for example, like US, we shake hands. In Latin America, you greet with a cheek kiss to the left for women.
You can't do this in Singapore. Actually, you can lah. Yeah.
You try see what happens.
No lah, but this is only for women.
For men, it's really greet other men with handshake. In Asia, it's different variations of bowing.
Bowing. You give people a bow. Okay, bowing. Yes.
In China, a bit of bowing, handshake, and things like that. So, let's talk about the cultural homogenization and hybridization. Okay, so globalization allows for a lot of interconnection, interdependent relationship among many countries. I think we have talked about this a lot.
Yeah, interconnectedness, interdependence, integration, all these words, please use them for explanation.
Yeah, so when the world is so much more interconnected now, this means that there's a lot of cultural exchanges around the world. Sometimes foreign cultures can be accepted or rejected, and this leads to the different attentions actually is dependent on impact of foreign culture on a particular country. So you can get different kinds of outcomes out of this. We have cultural homogenization and cultural hybridization, which we will cover for today's lesson. Okay, Mr. Clement Tan, what is cultural homogenization?
Okay, so cultural homogenization is a process whereby our local cultures are slowly being influenced by foreign cultures to become really a lot more similar to them. So what it means is really that certain forms of our local culture will be lost, and some of these foreign cultures will become a little bit more dominant, right? And this could lead to uneasy or some form of tensions between the locals as well as the foreigners. Yeah.
Actually, I think you can definitely see this when you travel overseas. Like for example, you can see Starbucks everywhere, McDonald's everywhere, and to some extent, like if you enter a mall, it's very hard to see something that is very authentically that country, because you generally, because you can always see like the same stuff. Like Sephora is like almost everywhere.
So all this is really the example of homogenization, whereby the foreign culture is taking over the local culture. That's a bit sad lah actually, but I mean, it is what it is.
Well, cultural hybridization is the process when foreign and local cultures are blended, so it results in a very unique combination containing elements from both cultures. So yes, hybridization can produce new culture products which may not include all elements of the culture. It's a bit of a mix and match. So this leads to changes in the nature of local culture. So you can see here, Ronald McDonald's. Technically, that's almost like cultural homogenization in a bit, right? Because it's the whole McDonaldization of the world. But to some extent, you see a level of hybridization here because you can see some elements of the Thai culture here.
I think McDonald's is a very good example of this hybridization, because if you go to different McDonald's around the world, you realize that the McDonald's are all very, very different. Say if I go to India, and because of the local culture, I will get something a little bit different. They may have more choices when it comes to maybe some form of vegetarian, because there are a larger proportion of the culture of the people that practice maybe Hinduism, right? So there's element of that as well. But if I go to, let's say in Taiwan or so, you realize that the McDonald's there is not halal, right? They serve pork and things like that. So it is very localized. The flavors are quite localized. The products is quite localized. The raw materials they use is quite localized. I think in Singapore we are quite blessed. We have quite a few different renditions of our burgers when it comes to McDonald's at different times of the year. I think Miss Rose, what's your favorite?
My favorite, McSpicy.
That's not even. That's not. A special burger.
No, it's only available in Singapore, right?
I know,
McSpicy.
yeah, but you can have it any time of the. What the? Yeah, I know that is the nasi lemak burger. I didn't manage to try it.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a little bit weird, so I decided to let it be.
But one thing I like to do is whenever I go to, when I was traveling before COVID and all that, I like to enter like McDonald's just to see like what's the different things in the menu.
Or is it because that's the cheapest place to eat?
No lah. I mean McDonald's not really that cheap also.
In certain places it's considered a.
Is it?
I don't know. Okay, never mind. Let's move on.
I think in language also, especially in Singapore, you can see a form of cultural hybridization. So I think Singlish, for example, there's different variations. When you speak Singlish, it's like you get words from just a mix of words between Malay, Mandarin, even like Hokkien, all the dialects and all that, which is very interesting.
You don't see this happening so often somewhere else, especially when the languages are so diverse. I mean, in certain countries you have different. Let's say in Vietnamese, you have different variations of Vietnamese, right? Different dialects. Like some words are slightly different. But here is totally different languages. So you don't actually see that so often.
I think at most maybe Malaysia, where the BSB or mix or match. But I think in terms of to what extent do we really mix languages, I think Singapore it really just goes all the way.
Yeah, I think there's no holds back in this sense.
Yeah. So let's talk about homogenization and hybridization in entertainment. So the cultural impact on entertainment is that there's a whole spread of foreign entertainment in TV, in film, music, radio, which actually reflects the acceptance of foreign cultural influences. But of course, because of all the influx of foreign entertainment, this leads to resistance to it as well. Where especially from people who are very passionate about the local entertainment industries, they will try as much as possible to protect the influence of foreign culture. So that is resistance. But for acceptance, we can see that local cultures can also influence foreign cultures, vice versa. So this results in hybridization of local and foreign cultures. So in terms of homogenization, you can actually see American influence in entertainment industry, where American entertainment industries mostly dominate the world today. I saw this thing online where they're saying that a lot of people are not really watching movies, but the best way to ensure that a lot of people are watching your movie is just to ensure that it's a Marvel movie. Like you put the Marvel logo on
the logo
it,
there,
just slap it there.
Goes,
everyone would watch.
Yeah, Flyman, Bitterman, Ratman.
Okay, let's stop there.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically there's two main perspectives of how the American culture influenced the mindset of people in different countries, right? So the whole idea of Americans all about like independence, right? So the whole idea of empowering people, usually like Asian, because the Asian values is very much different from Western values.
It's a lot more social, I guess.
More social, the whole idea of
the family before self, the society before self.
But for the Western culture, it's opposite. It's more like
before everyone else.
How do I accept my own identity, my own individuality?
Right, and these things could come into, it could clash with what the locals are actually experiencing. So that will create some tensions to
especially
some
for
extent.
the Asian culture, because it's very much about like community and all that, right?
And very humble to some extent. Like you don't really go and brag about things, but you see that so often in
hip hop.
American.
Yeah, especially in hip hop, right?
Yeah, I guess. So it is a little bit different lah.
Okay, so because a lot of countries fear that American influences might threaten local culture, language, and local entertainment industry, right? So these are just two examples of what has happened in France and China. So France actually implemented a rule to ensure that 40% of the TV programs must be in French. And if you want something that's non-European origin, it cannot exceed 40%. While for China, there's actually a restrict in the annual, but this is in 2014, restrict an annual limit of 34 foreign films. I know China is also very particular of what kind of, and all the way until now, right? Like
actually, this 34 is I recently just checked as well. I think it's still there.
It's still 34,
yeah,
is it?
It's still very strict. Yeah,
but I know sometimes, like, for example, even like Disney movies or I'm not sure about Marvel, but Disney, sometimes they will change certain ways that they portray their film or the movie posters for the Chinese market.
They request a censorship to some extent of certain things, especially ideas and beliefs that go against their
belief
system as well as the whatever the government wants to show. France itself, I think quite interesting. Like, I think we have learned about France society before. They are very passionate about
themselves,
their own language and culture. So I guess it's not that surprising to know that they want to continue to be proud of their own language and culture. But for China, it's it's a very funny story. Is that there are some movie companies that specifically go and shoot their movies in China and work with a local Chinese company so that they can bypass these 34 foreign films. So as to see as so it's technically a Chinese production rather than a foreign production. So all these different things lah. Yeah.
And I think when it comes to homogenization of culture, I think the most apparent now is the South Korean influence.
Oh, it's everywhere.
It's really everywhere.
Everywhere.
Starting in mid-2000s, the whole Hallyu wave, the South Korean wave actually swept the world in dramas, movies, music, food, fashion.
Everything.
Yeah.
Say what wave again?
Hallyu?
Huh?
How do you pronounce it? Hallyu?
Yeah, that's why I don't pronounce it. So it's you.
But recently I read this article about how whether it's a debate or whether we are all just watching the same thing online on Netflix. Because if you go to a main page on Netflix, you realize that it's just the same thing. Everyone's just watching the same thing.
Yeah. The top 10 things are really the top 10 things that people watch.
And it's very hard to really go beyond unless you really go to the obscure text.
Unless you got a lot of
Netflix.
time.
Yeah, but generally you all just watch the same thing.
Yeah. So what's the latest Korean drama you have?
I just finished watching this drama called Tomorrow, which basically talks about suicide. It's actually very good. You should watch. During holidays.
Sure. You know when I say sure, not when I don't do it.
Yeah, that's true. So, what happens if you are against this? So yes, there's one acceptance, but there's also resistance. So for example, in Japan, especially because of the whole historical background between Korea and Japan, so there's a lot of resistance, especially led by politicians and activists who have their own personal political agenda also, but they try to go against the Korean wave, do protests against it, try not to buy anything that is K-pop related or any Korean products
to
also.
further their own political career and things like that, right?
Yeah. I think because the whole idea of even if my economy is poor, the Japanese people will think to themselves no matter what, my country is still superior than other Asian countries in terms of content and related businesses. After all, there was a period of time where J-pop was really the thing, right?
Thing, yeah. That was before the K-pop itself.
Yeah. But so I guess the steep rise of K-pop and Korean dramas in Japan really shattered that belief. Why? Why do you read that?
You think of the... Never mind, it's okay.
No, but it's really true, you know. I used to be a big fan of this J-pop idol group called Arashi.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Anyway, it's a J-pop group, they disbanded already. But anyway, they're on hiatus for don't know how long. But it's actually very hard to find any materials on them unless I know how to speak or understand Japanese. It's very hard to find anything Japanese. Yeah, so it's really hard to continue being a fan of any J-pop group because it's unless I really go to obscure parts of the internet to find English subs of their stuff, it's really very hard.
I thought you're nowadays very into the Korean thing.
But sometimes I want to go back to my roots. I mean, not roots, but
what roots? Okay. No. Let's continue.
Okay, so Clementine, let's talk about hybridization in the entertainment industry.
Okay.
Say lah.
Say what? Okay lah. So basically, when it comes to hybridization in the entertainment industry, we do see some elements of foreign and local culture influencing each other, especially when it comes to certain movies. For example, I know the classic one is Kung Fu Panda, as well as there's one. What's the show again where you have the feelings? Is it Inside Out? Yeah, that one. I think they changed some of these elements to suit the local context.
Oh yes. There's this scene where the kid eats vegetable, but the vegetables that is being drawn changes according to countries.
Yes, because certain people in certain countries they have a major dislike for this kind of vegetables.
So for US, I think it's peas, but in Japan it's capsicum or bell pepper, green bell pepper.
Yeah, I hate both of them, so it doesn't matter for me. so things like that as well. So what the hybridization we can look at is really in some of the movies, especially when you want to go into the Chinese market. You need to add in elements of I guess the Chinese culture, right? So that they are able to screen it in China, or they are able to make the cut of the 34 movies. But how accurate and how authentic the culture is, I'm not too sure about it.
Okay, so let's talk about homogenization and hybridization in food.
Oh, your favorite?
Your favorite also. So when it comes to homogenization of food, the local food landscape has been influenced by foreign flavors due to globalization. So the good thing is that you are able to enjoy food from many countries. And many locals have embraced some aspects of this foreign influence. So for example, in Singapore, I think Singapore is the one that we can
embrace everything.
Yeah, embrace everything.
We go around and giving hugs to all the different kinds of food and culture.
Yeah,
Come on,
all
you
the
get a
good
hug.
things and the bad things just come.
Just give a hug. Yeah.
So for example, like the fast food culture, you can really see like McDonald's everywhere. You're talking about it a lot, right? Like no matter where you go, it's good and bad thing. The good thing is that I can always seek comfort in knowing that I can find a filet fish anywhere I go.
Who eats sweet? Okay,
It's nice, okay? For a Muslim traveller, if I don't know what to eat and I cannot find anything that's halal, I will just go eat filet fish.
Good for you.
For me lah, but for some people will still think it's not halal. But anyway, so but the fact that it's McDonald's everywhere, people would say that this reduces cultural diversity because if you're in a country like Japan, you should be eating like very Japanese food.
But it adds like kind of convenience, right? I mean, you and the familiarity as well. Knowing that you can have this in so many different countries, regardless of where you go to.
But then some people just don't like the idea of how like, if I'm let's say in Korea, why am I still saying Subway? Like if I'm in Korea, should I be like very authentically eating like Korean food and all that? So you see like US, Korea, UAE, we have Subway. Starbucks is everywhere also.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, you know how Muslims do pilgrimage in Mecca, right? Apparently, because I haven't been to Mecca yet, but near the place where you know the Kaaba, like the brown box, the black box. So apparently, very near in Mecca, you can actually see Starbucks also.
At there? Okay. So I guess I can get my Java chip anywhere I go to.
Yeah, except that you're not Muslim, so you technically cannot enter Mecca.
Really? Not. Oh. Actually, I didn't know about that, but okay.
Yeah, so anyway, so this leads to tensions with homogenization of food, right? Because like the same thing is everywhere. So in the 80s and 90s, when McDonald's was really expanding, a lot of Italians were very unhappy because they say like, the American culture is dominating our Italian culture. But now there's over 400 outlets in Italy today, so I guess they have embraced the American fast food culture. But in Bangalore in 1996, a lot of Indian farmers didn't want KFC to enter the country because they thought like, this is like a threat to their traditional agricultural practices because you're imposing Western farming methods on them.
I think this one is about how KFC only, once they enter there, they will actually work with the local farmers and then they will impose certain rules and regulations of how they want, as in this case, their poultry to be. So that influence the kind of traditional farming methods that I think the farmers have. Yeah.
So I realize all these tensions always come about because like, if all these Western or foreign food companies enter my country, it changes the normal way you go about doing things. So the core of the tension is always about that.
The change. People are not happy with, are not used to change. Yeah.
But then just some considerations. The idea of complete homogenization assumes that it's only a one-way flow. It's west to the rest of the world. But at the end of the day, we must also recognize that people have control over our actions. We're not just very passive shoppers buying stuff. The fact that yes, there's McDonald's all around the world, there's different McDonald's menu catering to different like local customers or whatever the local consumers want. Show that to some extent it's not a full homogenization because the locals have a say over what they want from the company itself.
I guess locals say it through the money, right? If they don't like it, they won't purchase it, right? So I think companies they can't do the full homogenization for everything.
So yes, there's strong homogenizing tendencies, but it doesn't mean like it's the end of our cultural diversity. So globalization really just helps to ease the process of entering another market. But at the end of the day, the Western food chain still must make an effort to understand the demands of the Asian consumers. Which is why you see like a lot of local flavors are adapted by Western food chains. So we can see hybridization and homogenization of local food culture. It's not like a totally one thing. Like I just homogenize everything. Everything is hybridized. It's like a mix of both to some extent.
And in certain place, in certain companies a bit more of one than the other. So it's not a blanket thing, I guess.
So for example, like dry pork and seaweed donut in Dunkin' Donuts in China. We have like the Black Ninja burger in Japan, things like that. Okay, but just one thing to take note, because now the westernized diet is everywhere, right? So this leads to rise in global obesity and spread of diseases like diabetes. Just sharing whatever that's in the slide here, just sharing based on whatever article that I've read recently, but how this article talks about how, because everyone's pretty much eating the same thing, right? It leads to loss of unique crops and obscure cultural delicacies. Because at the end of the day, it's all about demand and supply, right? If there's more demand of like the same kind of burgers or same type of Western meals, so there's lesser demand and supply for a more localized crop or more localized cultural delicacy. Which means that if everyone's eating the same thing, means everyone just dependent on a few staple crops, which is good and bad. The bad thing is that it means that because everyone's eating, for example, the same kind of wheat, this means that if any new diseases were to outbreak and target on that specific crop, the whole world is pretty much GG.com.
True.
So as a geog teacher, I'm sure you can relate to that, right?
Definitely.
So for example, bananas, which I didn't think about it, if you go every supermarket, it's like a lot of like bananas, right? So turns out banana is the fourth most valuable global crop after rice, wheat and milk, which I didn't know. To me, banana is just banana, right? But there's Cavendish bananas like everywhere. So bananas are eaten in poor countries where at least 400 million people rely on them for 15 to 27% of their daily calories. So bananas are no longer snacks. It's not like vital food for people to survive already. So which means if there's any disease outbreak or weather conditions that affect the growth and production of bananas, so there's really no backup variety, especially because everyone just eating Cavendish bananas like usually, like the same old brands. So the moment something targets the bananas, right, there's really no backup plan.
True.
It's not like backup banana and all that.
But I guess we can eat a different food.
True, but it also depends on how readily available it is, right?
I guess.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, a homogeneous global diet is not only unhealthy and boring, but it's very, very vulnerable to any kind of disaster. The whole idea of food security also.
Yeah, that I can agree with, definitely. So this is one of the issues with the whole world getting more and more globalized and all of us like conforming to, let's say, a shared global culture to some extent.
Yeah.
I mean, a shared global food culture, right?
So yeah, this is the end of today's lesson.
So sad. And it's such a sad thing.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm going to eat bananas after this?
Yes, I'm going to eat as many as I can.
No shame. Says Mr. Tai while he's holding to 2 packets of snacks.
Yeah, if I hear after the previous lesson, I'm still holding on to the same kind of snacks.
One of the snacks he took it from another teacher's table.
Okay, I shall not say who. let's end
today's lesson. If you are watching this video, means you are pretty much done with your holiday homework.
Yeah, there'll be a quiz.
Yeah.
Is it?
Something like that.
Maybe.
Or if you're watching this again, this means that prelims is coming or O-levels coming.
And that's when we say good luck to you.
Yeah. If there's anything, please read through your textbook, your notes, and approach your SS teachers. With that, this wraps up today's lesson. Bye.
Bye.